February 8, 1973. Madison Square Garden stood empty now, the roaring crowd long gone, their voices still echoing in Muhammad Ali's mind. "Frazier! Frazier! Frazier!" The humiliation cut deeper than any punch Joe Frazier had landed on him that night. For the first time in his professional career, the self-proclaimed greatest of all time had been truly defeated, knocked down in the 15th round, watching the referee's hand raised over his opponent's glove. The corridor leading to the locker rooms was eerily silent. The press had finally dispersed after hours of questions that felt like daggers. Is this the end of Muhammad Ali? Has the mouth finally been shut? Was your refusal to serve in Vietnam worth losing your prime years? Each question had pierced him like Frazier's devastating left hook. Now, sitting alone on a wooden bench in the dimly lit locker room, Muhammad Ali, born Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. 30 years earlier in Louisville, Kentucky, stared at his swollen hands. They had betrayed him tonight. These same hands that had danced with grace and struck with lightning speed against Sonny Liston, Cleveland Williams, and so many others, had failed to find their mark against Smokin' Joe. His face, once unmarked. After most bouts, thanks to his famous ability to float like a butterfly, now bore the evidence of Frazier's relentless attack. His right eye was nearly swollen shut, his lips split, and his ribs ached with each breath. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the agony in his soul. "I am the greatest," he whispered to the empty room, his voice cracking. "I am the greatest." The words that had once thundered from television screens across America now sounded hollow, a child's desperate wish rather than the proclamation of a champion. For the first time since he was a skinny kid who found his bicycle stolen outside the Columbia Auditorium in Louisville, Muhammad Ali began to cry. Not the theatrical tears he sometimes used to taunt opponents or entertain reporters, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook his powerful frame. Tears for the 3.5 years the government had stolen from him during his prime. Tears for the millions who had believed in him, whom he had let down tonight. Tears for the young boy from Kentucky who had dared to dream too big. Stories that have barely begun and already say everything. If just this piece reminded you of home, of someone who's already gone, or even a part of you that was forgotten, subscribe now. This channel only exists because of you. You are important to me. Here, we don't tell stories just to tell them. Every word here carries feeling. And if you felt something, it's because this story found you at the right moment. Click here, subscribe, and stay. You'll recognize yourself in every chapter. In that moment of complete vulnerability, the door creaked open. Ali quickly wiped his face, ready to snap at whatever reporter had sneaked back to catch the mighty Muhammad Ali in a moment of weakness. But it wasn't a reporter. Angelo Dundee stood in the doorway, his compact frame silhouetted against the hallway light. At 51, the veteran trainer's face showed every fight, every victory, every defeat he had witnessed from the corner. He had been with Ali since the beginning, since the loud-mouthed kid from Louisville had sought him out after winning gold at the 1960 Olympics. "Everyone's gone, champ," Dundee said softly, his Italian-American accent still carrying traces of his Philadelphia youth. "Car's waiting whenever you're ready." Ali turned away, unwilling to let even Dundee, perhaps especially Dundee, see the tears. "I'll be out in a minute, Angie. Just need to collect my things." Dundee nodded, but instead of leaving, he closed the door behind him and walked slowly across the locker room. Without a word, He knelt down beside the bench where Ali sat. His knees cracked, a reminder of his own boxing days long before he became a trainer. "What are you doing down there, old man?" Ali asked, trying to inject his usual bravado into his voice and failing. "The floor's no place for you." "I've spent my life looking up at giants, Muhammad," Dundee replied, using Ali's chosen name as he always had, even when others refused. "The view's just fine from down here." The simplicity of the gesture, this white man from a different generation, kneeling beside him in his darkest hour, broke something in Ali. Fresh tears came, and this time he made no attempt to hide them. "They beat me, Angie," he whispered. "Not just Frazier. All of them. The government, the boxing commission, the press. They finally got what they wanted. They broke Muhammad Ali." Dundee's weathered hand rested on Ali's shoulder, the touch light, but grounding. "No, son," he said, his voice firm despite its gentleness. "They didn't break you, and neither did Joe Frazier. You know how I know?" Ali looked at him, waiting. "Because I'm looking at you right now, and I still see the same fire in your eyes that I saw in 1960. Dundee squeezed Ali's shoulder. "They can't break what can't be broken, champ." The drive from Madison Square Garden to the Hotel Teresa in Harlem was mostly silent. Ali, slumped in the back seat of the Cadillac, stared out at the New York City streets, barely registering the flashing neon lights and late-night pedestrians. His mind replayed the fight in an endless loop. Each missed opportunity, each punishing blow from Frazier, the moment in the 15th round when his legs had betrayed him and he'd crashed to the canvas. Angelo Dundee sat beside him, occasionally, glancing at the boxer's profile silhouetted against the passing city lights. He had been in this position many times before, accompanying fighters after devastating defeats. But Ali wasn't just any fighter. From the moment a 21-year-old Cassius Clay had bounded into his Miami gym, Dundee had known he was witnessing something special, something that transcended the sport. "Remember Louisville?" Dundee finally said, as they turned onto 125th Street, breaking the heavy silence. Ali turned slightly, his swollen eye catching the streetlight. "What about it?" "1960, Dundee continued. "You were just a skinny kid fresh off the Olympic team. Came to me talking about how you were going to be champion of the world someday." A faint smile tugged at Ali's split lip. "I told you, I was going to be the greatest of all time." "That you did," Dundee nodded. "And I thought, this kid's either crazy or he's seeing something I don't see yet." They pulled up to the Hotel Teresa, known as the Waldorf of Harlem, where Ali always stayed when in New York. Unlike most hotels at the time, it welcomed black guests and had housed everyone from Josephine Baker to Malcolm X over the years. "Your room's ready, Mr. Ali," the night manager said as they entered, his eyes widening slightly at the boxer's battered face, but maintaining his professional composure. "And there have been several calls from the press." "No calls," Dundee interjected firmly. "Mr. Ali is not available until further notice." In the elevator, Ali leaned against the wall, suddenly looking every bit of his 30 years and more. The Aidon, youthful exuberance that had captivated the world seemed to have drained from him, leaving behind a man facing his mortality for perhaps the first time. "They're saying, I'm finished, Angie," he said as the elevator climbed. "That those years they took from me killed my prime." Dundee shook his head. "Since when does Muhammad Ali care what they say?" "Since they might be right this time." The elevator opened onto the 12th floor, and they walked in silence to Ali's suite. Inside, Dundee went straight to the mini-fridge and pulled out ice, wrapping it in a towel before handing it to Ali for his eye. "Sit down," he instructed, pointing to the couch. "I need to talk to you, and you need to listen." Ali complied, too exhausted to argue. Dundee pulled up a chair directly in front of him, their knees nearly touching. "In 1942, when you were just being born in Kentucky, I was working with a fighter named Willie Pep," Dundee began. "Greatest featherweight who ever lived. Had a style that reminds me of you. Fast, slick, defensive genius. They called him Will-o'-the-Wisp because trying to hit him was like trying to catch smoke." Ali nodded slightly, familiar with the boxing legend. In '48, Pep fought Sandy Sadler, got knocked out in the 4th round, lost his title, lost his undefeated record. Everyone said he was finished. "If this is supposed to be making me feel better," Ali started. Dundee held up his hand. 6 months later, Pep fought Sadler again, outboxed him for 15 rounds, reclaimed his title in what many call the greatest comeback in boxing history. "That was a different time, Angie. I'm 30 years old with a 3.5-year hole in my career." "I'm not finished," Dundee said firmly. After that comeback, Pep faced Sadler 2 more times, lost both fights. The last one was so brutal that many thought Pep would never fight again. Is there a point to this history lesson? The point, Muhammad, is what Pep did next. He fought for another 12 years, won 83 more fights. Not because he needed the money or the fame, but because fighters fight. It's what we do. If you felt something from this story, even something small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and subscribe now. Dundee leaned forward, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "But here's what I've never told anyone. After that last Sadler fight, I found Willie crying in his dressing room, broken ribs, cut-up face, and tears streaming down. Know what he said to me?" Ali shook his head. He said, "Angie, I let them all down. Everything I built, gone in one night." Sound familiar? Ali looked down at his hands, the hands that had failed him tonight. "You know what I told him?" Dundee continued. "I said, Willie, as long as you can come back tomorrow and try again, nothing's gone for good." And you know what? He did come back. And while he never again reached the heights of his championship, what he did was perhaps more important. He showed the world that a true champion's greatness isn't measured by whether he falls, but by how he rises. Dundee stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the Harlem night. "Muhammad, you're more than a boxer. You're a symbol now. When they stripped your title for standing up for your beliefs, you became something bigger than sport. Tonight doesn't change that. In fact, it might just be the beginning of your real story." Ali looked up, confusion mixing with the pain on his face. "The beginning? Angie, I just lost the biggest fight of my career." "Exactly." Dundee turned, a small smile playing on his lips. "And now the world gets to see something they've never seen before. Muhammad Ali coming back from defeat." Dawn was breaking over Harlem when the knock came at Ali's door. He had barely slept, his body aching from the punishment Frazier had delivered, his mind still churning with Dundee's words from the night before. Rolling painfully from the bed, he shuffled to the door, expecting perhaps Herbert Muhammad, his manager, or one of his entourage. Instead, he found Angelo Dundee standing there with a tray of food and a stack of newspapers. "Rise and shine, champ," Dundee said, brushing past Ali into the suite. "We've got work to do." Ali watched bemused as his trainer bustled about, setting down the tray on the coffee table and drawing the curtains to let the morning light flood in. "Work? Angie, the fight's over." "That fight's over," Dundee corrected, pouring coffee. "The real fight's just beginning. He tossed a newspaper onto the couch. The headline screamed, "The mouth is shut. Frazier crushes Ali." Another read, "The end of the greatest?" And a third, more cutting, "Ali finds reality hits harder than his mouth." Ali glanced at the headlines, then pushed them away. "I don't need to see that." "Yes, you do," Dundee insisted, "because I want you to remember how it feels. All these vultures circling, thinking you're finished. I want that feeling burned into your soul." Ali sat heavily on the couch, wincing as his bruised ribs protested. "Why? To torture myself?" "To fuel yourself," Dundee replied, sitting opposite him. The early morning light accentuated the lines on the trainer's face, evidence of decades in the unforgiving world of boxing. "Great men are shaped by their defeats, not their victories, Mohammed." Ali took a sip of coffee, studying his trainer, over the rim of the cup. In the 12 years they had worked together, through Olympic gold, the World Championship, the exile, and now this defeat, Angelo Dundee had been his constant. Not always a friend, their relationship was more complex than that, but always a presence, always a voice of reason amid the chaos of Ali's turbulent career. "Why have you stuck with me all these years, Angie?" Ali asked suddenly. "Through the name change, the Vietnam stand, all the controversy. Most white trainers would have walked away." Dundee seemed taken aback by the question. He set down his coffee cup and was quiet for a long moment. "You want the truth?" Ali nodded. "When you first came to me in '60, you were Cassius Clay, a gold medalist with potential. I'd seen plenty of those come and go, but within 5 minutes of watching you work, I knew." "Knew what?" "That I was looking at history," Dundee said simply. "Not just boxing history, American history, world history maybe. There was something in you, call it charisma, call it destiny, that transcended the sport." Dundee leaned forward, his eyes intent. "I've trained 15 world champions in my career, great fighters, all of them, but none like you. None who carried the weight you carry, who represented what you represent." Ali looked away, uncomfortable with the naked admiration in his trainer's eyes. "And what is it you think I represent? Angie? Hope?" Dundee answered without hesitation. "Hope for black kids in Louisville and Harlem and Chicago who never had a hero who looked like them and refused to apologize for it. Hope for anyone who ever had the courage to stand up and say, 'No,' when the world demanded yes." Dundee stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the awakening city. "You asked why I stuck with you through it all? It's simple. Because some things are bigger than boxing, bigger than politics, bigger than our differences. What you stand for, the dignity of a man to make his own choices, to be judged by his character rather than the color of his skin, that's something worth standing beside." Ali sat in stunned silence. In all their years together, through all the dramatic victories and controversies, Angelo Dundee had never spoken to him like this. The man had always been all business, technical, tactical, focused on the next opponent, the next challenge. This philosophical, almost poetic Dundee was a revelation. "I didn't know you felt that way," Ali finally said. Dundee turned, a half-smile on his face. "That's because I'm not the one with the big mouth in this partnership. I do my talking in the gym and in the corner. The rest is your department." Ali laughed, then winced at the pain in his ribs. "So what now, wise man? What's the plan?" Dundee's expression turned serious again. "Now we rebuild. Not just your body, but your spirit. Joe Frazier didn't just beat you physically last night, he got in your head. made you doubt yourself. That's what we need to fix first. He walked back to the couch and sat down, looking Ali directly in the eyes. The road back won't be easy. The boxing commission still hates you for defying them. The government still sees you as a draft dodger. And now the sports world thinks you're finished. Painting a real pretty picture here, Angie. I'm painting a real picture, Dundee corrected. Because that's what you need right now. Reality. Not more of your own mythology. Muhammad Ali, the myth, got knocked down last night. Muhammad Ali, the man, needs to get back up. The gym in Chicago was deliberately chosen for its obscurity. No reporters, no cameras, no entourage, just Ali, Dundee, and the basics of the sport that had made them both legends. The heavy bag swayed with each impact, leather against leather, creating a rhythm that had been the soundtrack to Ali's life since he was 12 years old. Sweat poured down his face as he worked, each punch still carrying the trademark speed. But now, with something new, a deliberateness, a focus that had sometimes been missing in the showman's arsenal. 6 months had passed since the night in Madison Square Garden. 6 months of quiet rebuilding, of soul-searching, of transforming. Defeat into purpose. Time! Dundee called, clicking the stopwatch. Water break. Ali grabbed a towel, wiping his face as he walked to the corner where Dundee stood. How'd that look? Better, the trainer nodded. You're not telegraphing the right as much. Still dropping your left shoulder on the hook, though. Ali took a swig of water. Always the critic. That's what you pay me for, Dundee smiled. If you wanted someone to tell you how pretty you are, you'd have hired a different trainer. The door to the gym opened, letting in a blast of July heat, along with a tall, slender man in an immaculate suit. Herbert Muhammad, Ali's manager and son of Elijah Muhammad, leader of the Nation of Islam, strode purposefully across the gym floor. We have an offer, he announced without preamble. Ken Norton, San Diego, September 11th. Ali looked to Dundee, who kept his face carefully neutral. Ken Norton was an up-and-coming heavyweight, unorthodox, strong, but relatively unknown. A tune-up fight, a stepping stone back to Frazier and the title. What do you think, Angie? Ali asked. I think Norton's got an awkward style. Stands like this, Dundee demonstrated a peculiar fighting posture. Throws punches from strange angles, but he's beatable. Very beatable. Then I want it, Ali decided. Tell them we accept. Herbert nodded, already reaching for his phone. I'll make the call. After he left, Dundee studied Ali's face. You sure about this? We could take more time. Time is the one thing I don't have, Angie, Ali replied, his voice carrying none of its usual bombast. I'm 31 years old. The clock is ticking. Dundee nodded, understanding. Back to work then. Let's focus on preparing for Norton's style. 2 months later, in the Forum in Inglewood, California, the unthinkable happened. Ken Norton, a 7-1 underdog, broke Ali's jaw in the second round and went on to win a split decision over 12 grueling rounds. It was Ali's second loss in 18 months, and for many, the final proof that the once-great champion was finished. The scene in the locker room afterward was eerily familiar. Ali alone on the bench, head bowed, but this time with his jaw wired shut, unable even to voice his despair. And once again, Angelo Dundee kneeling beside him, a hand on his shoulder. I know what you're thinking, Dundee said softly. That this is the end. That you've been exposed. That Muhammad Ali is done. Ali looked up, his eyes conveying what his mouth could not. They're writing your obituary out there, Dundee continued. Sports Illustrated's already working on a Fall of the Greatest cover story. The vultures are circling again. Despite the pain, Ali managed a questioning look. "Why am I telling you this?" Dundee interpreted. "Because I want you to use it. Every word they write, every obituary for your career. I want you to burn it into your mind." He stood up, pulling a small notebook from his pocket. "While you were in with the doctor, I was making notes. Norton has weaknesses. Big ones. He drops his right when he jabs. He backs up in straight lines. He can't adjust mid-fight. We missed these things in training. We won't miss them next time." Ali gestured at his wired jaw, then held up 6 fingers. 6 weeks until the jaw heals, yes, Dundee nodded. "But we don't need you to talk, Muhammad. We need you to listen and learn and hunger for redemption like you've never hungered for anything in your life." 6 months later, on March 31st, 1974, Muhammad Ali and Ken Norton met again. The tension in the arena was palpable. Many experts had predicted another Norton victory, citing Ali's diminished speed and reflexes. Even Ali's legendary trash talk had been subdued in the lead-up to the fight, replaced by an uncharacteristic, quiet determination. The bell rang, and for 12 rounds, Ali displayed a boxing masterclass. Not the dancing, showboating Ali of old, but a more measured, strategic fighter who had learned painful lessons from his defeats. When the final bell sounded, there was little doubt. Muhammad Ali had exorcised one demon. In the locker room afterward, amid the celebration of his entourage, Ali found a quiet moment with Dundee. "One down, one to go," Ali said, referring to Joe Frazier, who had since lost his title to George Foreman. "Foreman first," Dundee corrected. "He's the champion now, and he's a whole different animal than Frazier or Norton." Ali nodded. "I'll beat him, too. And do you know why?" "Tell me." "Because of what you taught me in that hotel room after Frazier, that a true champion's greatness isn't measured by whether he falls, but by how he rises." Dundee smiled, emotion threatening to break through his professional demeanor. "Using my own words against me now? They were good words, Angie. Maybe the most important you ever said to me." 7 months later in Kinshasa, Zaire, Muhammad Ali shocked the world by knocking out the seemingly invincible George Foreman to regain the heavyweight championship of the world at the age of 32. In the pandemonium that followed, as the Ihaidazi ring filled with celebrating officials, promoters, and entourage members, Ali found himself searching the crowd for one face. He spotted Dundee being pushed to the periphery by the swarm of well-wishers, the humble trainer content as always to let his fighter have the spotlight. Ali pushed through the crowd, wrapped his arms around his trainer, and whispered in his ear, "We did it, Angie. We rose." Dundee's eyes glistened with rare tears as he embraced the man he had helped to rebuild, not just as a boxer, but as a symbol of resilience that would inspire generations to come. If you reached this far and felt every word, will you leave without subscribing? I tell these stories with my heart in my hand to reach people like you, who feel, who get emotional, who live. If this truly touched you, give back. Comment. Subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video. End.